So what's up, guys? How are we doing? Got my coffee here. A new coffee today. Got it from Costco. It's a Mother Earth coffee. Mother Earth coffee. Can't speak this morning. It's pretty good. Got some more floral notes to it. I like my coffees a little more flavorful. I mix it up. I'm not biased towards one. I also got a pour over 3 days ago. Messing with that. Gotten a lot better at it. It definitely is much more of a skill than just the French press or brewing it in a coffee pot. But today I want to talk a little bit about a question I got. I got a question about, it's a good question. It's a fair question. It's a question I've probably had at times too. And it was the question was, I should just get to it. My goodness, if I could speak this morning, maybe I need more coffee, is if weightlifters have such great rate of force development, why aren't they the fastest sprinters? Fair question, but it's a question that's a little misguided. Now let's talk about why first and foremost. You think about weightlifting. Weightlifting is very different than that of sprinting. The muscles are different. The actions are different. No one is acyclic, so it's a single event. The other one is cyclic. There's multiple events. The type of collisions are different. So one's running with impacts. The other one is just lifting a weight. One has very large demands in the ankle and foot complex. One is a grounded movement. Not saying it doesn't have demands, but very different demands. So on the surface, even if weightlifting trained all the exact same muscles, for the most part, of that of sprinting, you still wouldn't expect it to be the most beneficial thing for sprinting, especially better than that of sprinting, just due to the sheer fact the movements are so innately different. But I think the question is more important because it highlights a big issue in our field, and that is the obsession of reductionism. And reductionism is ridiculously important, by the way, too. So a reductionist approach is to isolate a certain variable to understand how it interacts with potentially other variables, but first you need to isolate it to understand its role in the entire system. In the same way that you might isolate a single piston in a car or a wheel or the air in your tires, it's all part of a system as a whole. Now, if you understand how it fits in the system, then you could potentially improve it better. So when we look at things like rate of force development, and you look at it, and you look at, well, weightlifters maybe have really high rates of force development on a mid-thigh isometric pull. That's what research says, and so you draw conclusions that weightlifting has the potential to improve rate of force development. If rate of force development is really important for movement, then why don't weightlifters run really fast? Well, good question, but again, we fall short in the extrapolation. It's almost like we're playing telephone, and the further we get away, the less and less sense this question makes. And it's okay, because I think it's a good question, again, because it highlights a lot of the issues. Remember why in the initial thing, the test was done in the first place. What were the researchers trying to figure out? They were just trying to figure out what movement improve rate of force development. But then you need to realize what aspects are involved in sprinting and what areas of movement need to get improved, what muscles, what systems need to have improved rates of force development for sprinting in conjunction with, by the way, this is purely mechanically speaking, other tissues like elastic structures, soft tissues, maybe fascia, maybe tendons and ligaments and so on, can be improved to improve sprinting performance. Then we get into the skill aspect, because that's a whole nother thing, because sprinting is a skill. You can't just have good motor potential. You could have a Ferrari, but you could still drive it 3 miles an hour if you don't know how to drive it really well. You could have a Honda and you could floor that sucker and smoke the Ferrari if you knew how to drive it better than the person driving the Ferrari. It's not always about the engine, it's about the driver as well, so your ability to apply and use the skill. But again, to go back to the initial question of why don't weightlifters have extreme amounts of speed and sprinting ability, it's because they're really different. Rate of force development is a small percentage of explained variance and outcomes amongst sprinters. So we take all the sprinters, 100 of the best sprinters, and you look at their scores, and you say, okay, out of the 100 best sprinters in the world, what makes them the best? And compared to, well, non-100 best sprinters, the ability to have high levels of rate of force development might only explain their success by 7% maybe. So while it does play a role, it only explains 10 to 7% of their success, while other variables might play a larger role. So again, understanding the variable And the significance of that variable in the system, the explained variance, the amount of benefit it provides to the system, is critically important. So when you look at a reductionist approach, it's easy to think this independent variable, this isolated variable is most important. But when you apply it to the big picture, you need to think about the explained variance in totality with all the other variables integrated. And that is why it's so important to try and understand all those other variables that go inside performance. Because if you understand the other variables, then you can begin to understand and appreciate the magnitude of explained variance a single variable has and whether or not that is something most important striving for. Because you could test just about millions of other variables and you could probably find some level of explained variance in sprinting success, 0.01% or something so minuscule. But is that actually significant in the grand scheme of things when you try to put together an actual program for someone to become the best they can? And again, that question of why don't weightlifters, or why are weightlifters not the fastest sprinters, is a great example, because it highlights how on a reductionist approach to understand a single independent variable that has some level of explained variance can get overly extrapolated and emphasized as if it is the only variable to explain variance and success. So if you guys like these videos, let me know. I hope you enjoy. As always, take care. I appreciate you listening. Feel free to comment, share, and like. And thank you for tuning in. I hope you all take care.